back to another episode of Tech Champions. I'm your host, Daniel Beaty, CTO with Auditmacs, based here in Jacksonville, Florida. As you know, we take time each week to sit down with thought leaders and subject matter experts in the field of technology. We love to hear about them, their mission, and we love to get their perspective on the latest trends in the industry. We always have amazing guests. Today is no exception. Our guest today is Aron Elston, joining us from Fort Mill. Is that North Carolina or South Carolina, Aron?
South Carolina. Yeah.
South Carolina. All right. Near Charlotte. So welcome to the show, Aron.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You bet. You're very welcome. Glad to have you on. And I like to ask our guests, just because they come from all over the country, how's the reopenings going in your area?
I think it's going slow. My company, the place I'm working right now, I'm actually able to go in the office a few days a week, which is nice given that my house is very busy with children and my wife and animals. So I get to be able to kind of come in the office, of course, observing social distancing, wearing my mask, etc. And the workplace right now, when I come in, is like a ghost town. There's basically nobody here except for a few people. So other than that, hunkering down, staying safe. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. No, that's great. I like the joke that there's probably more social distancing going on at my office than there is at my house right now. I'm in a similar situation with 4 kids and pets and all that. So that's great. Good to hear. So you have pretty impressive resume, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of your history. I know you are a VP at LPL Financial. You've spent time at PwC and Accenture, and kind of get your feet wet, maybe literally in the Navy even, as a nuclear reactor operator. So tell us a little bit about your journey to this point and your current mission.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I originally started in the Navy. I was a nuclear reactor operator, which is I liken it to SEALs for Geeks, because it was a very hard, rigorous program that we had to do. Everything was college level courses. And I was, as a reactor operator, I had to learn electronic systems, electronics technology. I had to take a lot of advanced courses, all right down to circuitry design, Boolean algebra, etc. And then I was trained in nuclear operations, which involved atomic theory, heat transfer, calculus, pre-calculus, etc. Then we had to train on a nuclear submarine, on full-out plant operations. I ran the control systems. So doing controls has gone way back in my career. And then I ended up serving on the USS Roosevelt. Once I got out of the Navy, I was really focused into IT. A lot of people go into nuclear power plants, but I really just love computer systems and technology. So when I got out, I got certified as a certified network engineer, and got several certifications: Microsoft System Certified, Unix Administrator Certified in Sun, Solaris. And then I was enlisted in the Navy, so I finished my degree. I went and got my master's in business administration, and then I ended up doing a lot of project management, received my PMP certification, and then worked at a compliance organization for a healthcare organization. At that point, I went from the industry into consulting, and that's when I moved actually from Tampa. I'm originally from Florida, down south for you guys. And I did do a little bit of school at the University of North Florida there, local for you guys, before I went in the Navy.
Right in Jacksonville. That's great.
Yeah. I lived in Jacksonville. I surfed all up and down the coast there, so I'm an old surfer. But then I moved up north to New York. I worked for Ernst & Young. And the key thing that really got me that position in consulting was my SQL knowledge, was that I knew how to code SQL. And we did analysis on the anti-money laundering transaction monitoring systems. So we had to tune them and optimize them. And that's really when I got deep into analytics. So a long time, a whole career just doing administration and technology, then really learning database skills. And then I moved into anti-money laundering. And then what happened was my boss actually left the company. He went to work for Goldman Sachs. Then he went over to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he basically recruited myself, and we built a whole new team, started with about 20 people. And that was John Sabatini. He actually runs financial crime for PwC currently. And our team grew from I believe we started with 25 people to when I left PwC to go to Accenture, we had like 600 people within the organization.
Oh, wow.
So that team grew crazy, very wildly. And then we expanded our analytics beyond anti-money laundering into compliance. I've worked a lot with internal audit. I did a lot of data testing from some of the larger organizations. I ran a lot of data testing and then data testing for a very large organization here in Charlotte, probably the biggest one in Charlotte, and then as well as some of the companies, larger companies out of New York City. My last 2 years before I came and worked here locally, which has been nice living, I live in Fort Mill, is I worked at Accenture, and there I ran analytics for them for a couple of years. I did some really interesting projects around blockchain, also did managed services projects for delivering anti-money laundering capabilities through new platforms. We used Hadoop with Tableau interfaces. So that was really great stuff. And then I do have right now we do have a startup company that we're working on to where we have a patent pending around it's analytics based, but also with cloud for a method for capitalizing cloud basically. That right now we're in patent pending and we're through it's a startup, but full time I am working at LPL running their technology testing program. Yeah.
All right. That's great. Wow, that's a really interesting history. And I think I heard a NetWare. Would that be Novell NetWare in your list somewhere?
Yes, yeah, I started with Novell NetWare back in the day.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm actually a certified Novell administrator. I'm not sure it's valid anymore, but
Really? Wow,
haven't used it in a while. But used to run those networks for some engineering firms back in the day. That's great.
I haven't
So we
touched Novell. Oh, sorry.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's certainly been a while.
Yeah.
So we talked a little earlier about some of your thoughts on the biggest challenges that are facing IT, and you mentioned a couple of things I found pretty interesting. That is basically managing and then integrating data. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts there and what your concerns are there?
Yeah, I think most of the companies I've worked with, and it seems common, is that we're in a world with all these computer systems and all these technology, and the real value out of them is the data that's actually within them and understanding what's going on. So we have a lot of Excel spreadsheets, we have databases, we've moved from SQL-based databases and mainframes to client server, and now we're doing cloud. So how do we organize all that and how do we integrate it in the best way so that we can get the most value out of understanding it? And you have companies like Google and LinkedIn that are very analytics focused. So especially working in the financial industry, a lot of banks are saying, well, how can we take advantage of these methodologies? And a lot of times companies tend to jump to the front of saying, well, we'll get this data visualization and we'll put this information together, but they're not taking the time to organize and understand the data and where it's coming from in order to build that. I really liken it to building a house. You don't start with the roof, right? And the paint, you start with the foundation.
Yeah. No, that's great. So talk a little bit about some of the ways that IT can utilize things like analytics and artificial intelligence to help the business.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple mindsets in terms of analytics being a technology or being a business, and the fact is that it's kind of both. My career, especially when you look at the background, I started in technology, and then I moved over. When I got my MBA, I thought originally that maybe I should get a master's in computer science, but I really wanted to understand more about the business, understand the reasons of what we're using technology, and there has to be a joining between the two mindsets. So that's, for example, why I work a lot in compliance, but I have to work a lot with technology. So when you're using analytics, it's good to understand the tools and the pieces you're using, right? Whether it's we're going to use a big data, database or NoSQL such as Hadoop or Mongo or something like that. Or if we're going to use data visualization with a tool like Tableau or Power BI or ClickSense or something like that. But before we kind of do those sort of things, we need to understand what are the questions we're asking, what is the business reasoning, and also that the business is tied into that reasoning, as well as giving the business the ability to interact in an iterative agile method, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. So when analytics and AI are done right, what can it really mean to the business?
It's just really powerful, extremely powerful, especially when you're able to get really good data and you're able to do full population testing of the data, as well as, what I like to call interrogation, right? So using data visualization tools, it gives a new viewpoint. We're used to this world of having to look at lots of spreadsheets, but if we use tools like AI to organize that and then provide for, I think there's two main methods right now that I've worked on. One is providing a data-driven narrative, right? So if you use an AI methodology to gather the data and then provide it in a meaningful way that the person can understand. The other way is using visualization such as graphs or charts, but in a way that allows you to, functionally drill into it, not static reporting, but what I like to call apps, app-based interfaces where I can say, oh, I want to be able to go from a high level and then move down that level. All these things sort of marry together. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's great, and it makes me think of another one. And a lot of folks I talk to are struggling to kind of open those lines of communication between IT, I would say, and the rest of the business. Do you have any recommendations there for kind of opening up those lines of communication between those departments that don't always talk a lot?
Yeah, I think that's where I've sort of set my sweet spot. And there's a book that I've been reading recently, Analytics for Leadership, and I want to make sure I get the title right. I'll send it to you. But it talks about purple people. So they're the people that kind of sit between technology and the business. I liken it to almost like the Office Space guy that was like, I talk to engineers because they don't like, that role. And having that ability to understand both sides, right? So I can think technology, understand how that's working, but I also have an appreciation for the business. And then understanding that historically, we sort of had IT as being like the ivory tower. And so we would pitch things over the fence at IT. We really want to kind of put some of those technology capabilities within the business or within, those other lines so that you get a clear line of communication. Everybody's able to do the things like heavier things like you need to administrate and handle your security, manage your infrastructure, et cetera. Okay, that's pure technology functions. While as doing dashboarding or building, organizing, data sets for analysis, maybe we put some of those things within the business function, but have people within that function that have that technical training to do it correctly, right, and follow the proper controls so that it's at enterprise level.
Yeah. I like that a lot, and I find that the developers tend to kind of work with blinders on, and unless and until they understand what the business actually needs, and that's kind of an eye opener for them and can shift their whole approach. So that's great. Can you give us a couple real world examples of the business benefits that can take place?
Absolutely. Most of my experience has been working in compliance and audit, and I worked with an organization a few years ago, and we stood up an analytics function with them. The main challenge they had was that they had just one person that was kind of doing the analytics, and the whole department was like, this guy's great, and he was overtasked, but they didn't really have it organized. So what they wanted to do is like, well, how can we take what this person's doing and organize those functions so that we're getting the best benefit? The biggest thing is that what we've done historically, or what I've done historically, and I like doing is a pilot program, focus on specific areas to do analytics. Don't try to boil the ocean in terms of like, we're going to put this program and send it out to everybody. What we like to do is we actually found a few key people and we work with them to create use cases, and then you test those use cases through a metrics-based methodology. So for example, let's say on the business side, you're wanting to, you're doing trading and you need to make sure you're doing a proper QA function. And what we did was that we would set up the analytics. We would say at the beginning, how much time are we taking? How much failures are we getting? How much time are people doing documenting? So gather some basic baseline metrics. Then we would implement the program. record the changes, and then we would base it against it. The other thing is that we wanted to use a scientific method. So you don't want to put this out onto all the team. You kind of split it out so that you can compare the two to make sure that the outcome is really aligned to what you get. Some of the things that we got out of that, that was really great was we uncovered issues that just people weren't aware of. I think I remember one was around hazard insurance, that people actually hadn't gotten training, and nobody knew this. So when we ran our analysis, we found, there's a number of these insurance ratings that aren't being certified per the regulation. And once we reached out to the people and we found out where they were, we found out, this team actually had missed the training. So they weren't implementing them on time. So there was an immediate impact. There was a risk that was avoided, and they were able to change the impact and then measure the output and say, yep, 2 months after this, we actually found that everybody was in line for the most part.
Okay. Oh, that's great. I love the example there. That's terrific. One last question as we're wrapping things up. Since we are called Tech Champions, I'd love to ask, in your opinion, what's one characteristic it takes to become a tech champion?
Constant thirst for knowledge, I think, is really key. I remember when I was really young, before I really, went to the Navy and everything, I thought, gosh, I can't wait to get out of school so I have to study all the time. And I found that was definitely not true. My desire and, need to kind of learn more and keep that sword sharpened is really an edge, I think, especially working in technology, that there's always something new coming out. How do I know about it? Some of the things I do is I have a lot of BuzzFeed articles that I read, as well as I constantly, right now I'm taking a course on Python for time series analysis. And I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm learning about the newest AI machine learning methodology. So, constantly sharpening that sword. And it goes beyond just I need to do it. It's really become a real desire, and I really enjoy it. Yep.
Well, that's great. That's great. Constant thirst for knowledge. I love it.
Yes.
So, Aron, we're gonna get things wrapped up, but how can people find you if they want to reach out to learn more about you and what you're up to? Is LinkedIn the best method, or some other way?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. It's, I don't have my LinkedIn link, but if you look for Aron Elston on LinkedIn, I'll come right up. We have a website, www.teknowledgit.com. It's the same name as the thing. There's a contact in there, so you can shoot me an email via that. I can also be reached at aaron@teknowledgit.com. I check my email regularly. So those are all really great methods of getting in contact with me.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on the show, Aron. It's been super insightful. And thank you for coming on with us. And thank you for joining us. My name is Daniel Beaty, and we'll see you next time on Tech Champions.